Lin Ruoxi sat in the last row of the classroom, and the raindrops outside the window hit the glass, making a shattering sound. Her hands held her chin, her eyes stared at the blackboard with a hollow look, and her brain was thinking about the strange dream last night. In the dream, she stood in front of an ancient glass, which was rippling like water waves. Then she reached out and touched it, and the next second she fell into a completely unfamiliar place. A strange light floated in the high building, and an indescribable sense of pressure was filled with the air. After waking up, she could still feel the ice in her palm, as if she had really touched the lens. Ruoxi, Ruoxi. A crisp shout pulled her back to reality. Chen Xiaoqing slipped to her at some point, with a gossip on her face, her eyes lit up like a searchlight. You are in a daze again. Did you secretly chase the drama and didn't sleep well last night? Or, what little secret did you tell me? Ruoxi rolled her eyes and smiled helplessly. Xiqing, your brain is too big. What secret can I have? I just didn't sleep well and just had a dream. She lowered her head and turned on the book on the table, pretending to listen to the lesson seriously, but it was still a mess in her heart. That dream was so real that she could remember the smell of air, like a burnt smell mixed with the coldness of some metal. Xiaoqing curled her lips, obviously not believing it, but she didn't ask any more. She took out a pack of snacks from her pocket and secretly stuffed them into Ruoxi's hand. She said in a short voice, "Then you have to cheer up. There is also a math exam in the afternoon. Don't fail the exam again, otherwise your mother will have to read you to the sky." After saying that, she stuck out her tongue and slipped back to her seat. Ruoxi looked at the snacks in her hand and felt unconsciously slapped. Xiaoqing always felt like this. She was so rude in her mouth, but she always treated her as a little sister who needed care in her heart. She stuffed the snacks into the toilet, took a deep breath, and tried to make herself focus. But I still couldn't help but recall the lens, and the strange world behind the lens. After school, the rain had stopped and the sky was still gray. Ruoxi carried his book bag on his back and walked home alone. Her family lives in an old alley. There is a deserted shop at the entrance. There is a broken sign hanging at the door, writing "Anti-Style Warehouse." She has been a little curious about this place since she was a child, but has never been there. I heard that the boss inside is a weird person and the things sold are also strange. Even the ants in the alley said that people who have been in there will always be some disagreements. She stopped walking today. The shop was half open, and a dim light shone out from it. She hesitated for a moment and pushed the door open by a stranger. The ginger on the door emits a crisp sound, and the air is filled with a sense of old smell, like an old book and a musty smell mixed together. There was no one in the store, and there were all kinds of miscellaneous objects, old porcelain, yellow books, and some irons with indescribable uses. Ruoxi was about to turn away when he suddenly glanced at a mirror standing in the corner. The lens is very tall, with dark redwood frames on the edge, carved with some strange flower patterns, which looks a bit like the one she had seen in her dreams. She felt nervous and couldn't help but walk away. The lens was a little blurry, reflecting her slightly white face, and her two confused eyes. "How does this thing look so much?" she muttered in a low voice, reaching out to touch the lens. Just as the fingertips touched, a sudden ripples appeared on the surface of the lens, spreading like water waves. Ruoxi was stunned for a moment, and without reacting, the whole person was sucked in by an invisible force. "Ah!" She screamed in surprise, and then her eyes turned black, and only the sound of crying was left in her ears. When she opened her eyes again, she realized that she was standing on a completely unfamiliar street. Around them are the high-pitched buildings. The glass curtain wall reflects strange blue light, and some broken lights float in the sky, like broken stars. There was no one on the street, but there was a tight breath in the air, which made her unable to help but slap her. "Where is this?" Ruoxi looked down at herself, still wearing the white t-shirt and denim pants, and her book bag was still on her back, but everything around her was completely different from the world she was familiar with. She tried to pinch her arm, and her eyebrows were so painful that it was not a dream. She was panicking and staring around when she suddenly heard a deep footsteps coming from behind her. She turned around suddenly and saw a tall figure walking out of the alley. The man was wearing a black dress, with no expression on his face, and his eyes were as cold as ice. He stopped, looked at Ruoxi up and down, and then opened his mouth. His voice low and Sha said, "Who are you? Why did you appear here?" Ruoxi was so angry that he was staring at him, and replied in a daze, "My name is Lin Ruoxi, and I don't know how it came about. I was still in a store, and then..." She couldn't continue because she thought it sounded like nonsense. The man glanced at the eyebrows, with a flash of confusion in his eyes, but soon he became cold again. He walked closer a few steps, and Ruoxi subconsciously stepped back, and heard him say coldly, "This is not where you should come. It's very dangerous near the crack, so leave quickly." "Rider? What kind of rider?" Ruoxi was soaked in water, but she could feel an indescribable sense of pressure on the man, which made her dare not ask more. He didn't answer, he just turned around and prepared to leave. But at this moment, a low sound suddenly came from the air, as if something was tearing the air. Ruoxi looked up and saw that the sky that was not far away seemed to be broken by something. A strange light radiated from the black crack, and the light around it began to shake violently, as if it was about to be sucked in. "Don't die, come again." The man lowered his curse and turned to Ruoxi, "Stand and don't move. No matter what you see, don't run around." After he said that, he raised his hand, and a layer of blue light suddenly lit up in his palm. Then the light quickly expanded, forming a translucent barrier that separated the cracks. Ruoxi looked at everything in a daze, his brain was blank. What is this? Superpower? Or is she having a daydream? She even forgot to be afraid, just stood there blankly, watching the man confront the rifter. After a few minutes, the crack finally settled down and narrowed until it disappeared. The man withdrew his hand and sweated heavily on his head. It seemed that his actions had consumed a lot of his energy. He turned around and looked at Ruoxi, his temperament was still cold and hard. "What are you fucking here? Didn't you hear what I said?" Ruoxi returned to her senses and hurriedly said, I didn't mean it. I really don't know where this is, nor how to go back." There was a trembling sound in her voice. It was so shocking that just now. He was silent for a while, as if measuring something, and finally opened his mouth. "My name is Zhang. Since you can appear here, it means that you have some contact with the cracker. Come with me, I have some questions to ask you." Ruoxi hesitated for a moment, but looking at the unfamiliar environment around her and the terrifying crack that had just happened, she knew she had no choice. She clicked her head and said in a short voice, "Okay, but you have to tell me first, what exactly is this?" Zhang glanced at her and did not answer directly, but said lightly, "A place you shouldn't know. But since you are here, don't expect to go back easily." After speaking, he turned around and walked forward, regardless of whether Ruoxi could keep up. Ruoxi bit his lip and followed with his stern. Her heart was a group, fearful and curious, and a strange feeling that she couldn't describe. She always thought that this place was exactly the same as the world in her dreams. They walked for about 10 minutes and arrived in front of a broken building. Zhang pushed open a beamed iron door, which was filled with an empty hall, with only a few dim lights shaking. He motioned Ruoxi to sit down, then stood against the wall, his eyes still cold. "Say, how did you come? Don't tell me something I don't know. I don't believe it." Ruoxi took a deep breath and told everything that had just happened, including the lens and the moment she was sucked in. After saying that, she looked at Zhang carefully, afraid that he would think she was telling her mercy. After he finished listening, his eyebrows became even tighter and murmured, "Slide. Could it be that channel?" He glanced at Ruoxi, his temperament slightly calmer. "It seems you didn't come in on purpose. However, since you can pass the channel here, it means that you have some special ability, or, you are the person you were selected." Being selected? What does it mean? Ruoxi became more and more confused as he heard it, and he felt as if he was listening to a fish in the sky. Zhang didn't explain it, but just slammed, "It's useless to tell you now. You just need to know that this is a parallel world, a place torn by time and space cracks. The unstable crack will affect the balance of the two worlds. If you don't stop it, the consequences will be unthinkable. Ruoxi was stunned. Parallel world? Cracking? These words sound like lyrics in science fiction movies, but she just saw the cracker with her own eyes and Zhang Yichen's ability. Everything was so real. She swallowed and asked in a small voice, "Then, can I go back? I mean, go back to my original world?" Zhang Yichen was silent for a while, and finally said, "Yes, but not simple. The passage you come to is single. To go back, you need to find another crack, and it must be passed at the right time." "What does it mean to be worse?" Ruoxi's heart sank. He didn't answer directly, but said coldly, "You'd better pray that you're good at running around. You'll have to stay with me in the next few days, and I'll teach you some basic things so that you won't die too quickly." Ruoxi was jumped by his words, but looking at his expressionless face, she knew that this was not a joke. She clicked a little, and although she was still scared, she also had a strange feeling maybe it was not accidental. In the next few hours, Zhang Yichen briefly told her about parallel worlds and clefts. It turns out that this world was the same as hers, but due to a huge energy impact, time and space were torn apart, forming countless cracks. The crack is not only a channel, but also releases dangerous energy, affecting the stability of the two worlds. People like Zhang Yichen are called guardians and are responsible for repairing cracks and preventing them from expanding. As for you, Zhang Yichen looked at her, with a flash of exploration in his eyes. There are not many people who can shuttle and crack. You may be an accident, or you may be a key. Ruoxi heard that his skin was numb, but he couldn't resist. She looked down at her hands, trying to recall the feeling she felt when she had just passed through the lens, but there was only a blank in her brain. She didn't know why she was rolled in, nor did she know what would happen next, but she could feel that it was just beginning. As night fell, the lights in the old building became even more dim. Zhang Yichen found her a corner and asked her to rest first, saying that she would take her to a place tomorrow and try to find the passage. Ruoxi lay on the hard floor, her brain was terrible, full of the scene at home, and the smiling face of Xiaoqing. She didn't know if she could go back or what the world would bring to her, but she didn't know what her life had changed. Far away, Zhang Yichen leaned against the window, looking at the cracked fragments in the night sky with a complex look. He held a small crystal in his hand, like some token, and murmured in a low voice, "I hope this time won't be wrong again." Ruoxi curled up in the corner of the old building, with an old blanket rolling from nowhere on her body. The hard floor hurt her back, but she was not sleepy at all. Outside the window, the night sky was torn apart by cracks, radiating blue light, like a huge net that would swallow people at any time. She turned around, her brain was still terrible, full of the scene at home, and the grinning face of Xiaoqing. She could even imagine that at this time, her mother should be busy having evening meals in the kitchen, and she would be talking about her exam. But she is now in this ghost place and can't find the way back. Far away, Zhang Yichen stood by the window, his shadow stretched long by the dim light. He looked down at the crystal in his hand, and there was a heavy feeling in his eyes that could not be described. Ruoxi secretly glanced at him for a few moments, and his heart was a little scared. This guy was as cold as ice from head to tail, and he didn't talk much, but he always felt that he had a lot of secrets. She couldn't help but open her voice, "Hey, aren't you going to sleep? Are you going to take me to find some passage tomorrow?" Zhang Yichen turned over, his eyes still so cold, as if he hadn't heard her voice at all and was trying. He said lightly, "I don't have to sleep. You'd better take a tight time to rest, and you won't be relaxed tomorrow." After speaking, he turned back and continued to stare out the window, as if waiting for something. Ruoxi curled his lips and muttered, "It's really inhumane," but he didn't say anything more. She closed her eyes and tried to relax, but her brain was still thinking about what happened today. Scope, cracks, parallel worlds. These things sound like movie plots, but now she is really standing here, and the burnt smell in the air is so real. She clenched a corner of the blanket, and felt both scared and indescribable curiosity in her heart. Why was she rolled in? Zhang Yichen said that she might be the chosen one. What does that mean? Just like this, Hussein thought about it all night, and Ruoxi slept in a daze for a while before dawn. The light in the old building was still very dark, but the strange blue light outside the window had faded a little. She rubbed her eyes, sat up, and saw Zhang still standing there, her posture exactly like last night, as if she hadn't moved at all. She couldn't help but mutter, "Aren't you really a robot? You're not tired after standing all night?" Zhang ignored her comments and just turned around and said, "Get up and be ready to leave." His temperament was still so hard, but Ruoxi was already a little bit polite. She patted the gray on her body, carried her bookcase, and followed him out of the building. The streets outside were still empty, and there was an indescribable sense of pressure in the air. Those floating lights didn't look that eye-catching during the day, but occasionally they would flash suddenly, as if reminding her how abnormal this place was. Zhang walked in front and walked very fast, and Ruoxi had to trot to keep up. She gasped and asked, "Where are we going? Can you tell me clearly first?" He said without looking back, "The core of the crack. There is an ancient passage there, which may have something to do with your lens. If the weather is good, you can find your way back. What if the air is not good?" Ruoxi couldn't help but chase and ask. Zhang stopped walking, turned to look at her, and his eyes were filled with impatientness. "Then you have to prepare for staying here for a long time." After speaking, he continued to move forward, regardless of the expression on Ruoxi's face that was about to collapse. Ruoxi gritted his teeth and followed him with his head. Although she was reluctant in her heart, she also knew that there was no choice but to follow this guy now. The streets became narrower and narrower, and the buildings on both sides seemed to be flattened by something. The glass was broken all over the floor, and some strange marks were left on the wall, like marks scratched by claws. Ruoxi felt embarrassed when she saw it, and couldn't help asking, "Is there something happening here, in the past? Why does it look so broken?" Zhang paused for a moment and said in a low voice, "When the crack first appeared, this was a battlefield. Many people died, many people in order to fight the crack's power. Later, the crack lost control and the energy went wild, destroying this area almost completely." He said it plainly, but Ruoxi heard it fluttering. She tried to imagine the scene, but there was only a blank in her brain. This was really too far away from her life. They walked for about an hour and finally arrived at a clearing. A huge stone tablet stood in the middle of the open space, full of runes that I couldn't understand. The air around seemed to be twisted by something, and you could see circles of waves spreading. Zhang stopped and turned to Ruoxi, "It's here. Stop far away, don't touch anything." Ruoxi clicked a little, and retreated a few meters away, watching Zhang walk to the stone tablet. He raised his hand, and the blue light lit up in his palm again, and then the light slowly scattered, as if trying to explore something. A low sound suddenly came from the air, like the sound of the crack yesterday. Ruoxi felt nervous and subconsciously tightened his bookcase. "Finished," Zhang said in a low voice, then turned to look at Ruoxi. "Come over, but don't be upset." Ruoxi walked over carefully and found that the air in front of the stone tablet seemed to have been torn a small passage, with faint light emitting inside, and you could see the scene on the other side, the blurry street, and the familiar road lights. Her eyes lit up and she couldn't speak. "This is the world I came to?" Zhang clicked a little, but his face was not good-looking. "Yes, but the crack is not stable. If you pass it through, it may be dangerous. I need time to adjust its energy. You can stay first, don't run around." Although Ruoxi was as anxious as a hot pot, he also knew that this was not a time to get angry. She pointed, "Okay, I won't move." As soon as the voice fell, a sharp sound suddenly came from a distance, like a sharp sound of metal rubbing. Zhang face changed in an instant, and he suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction where the sound came. "Do you have to die? They are them." He lowered his curse and then said to Ruoxi, "Hide behind the stone tablet and don't make a sound." Ruoxi was soaked in water, but seeing his appearance as if he was a big enemy, he didn't dare to ask any more. He hurriedly hid behind the stone tablet and poked out half of his head to look at him secretly. After a few seconds, several figures walked out of the street. The man in the head was wearing a pair of gold-shaped glasses and a clean white shirt. He looked gentle, but his eyes were so cold that it made people feel cold. There were several people following him, and there was an indescribable sense of slightness on his body, as if he would come up at any time. "Ichen, I haven't seen it for a long time." The man with a glass opened his mouth, his voice as if he was greeting an old friend, but there was a sense of uneasiness in his language. "Why, have you found a new toy? Or, have you finally found the person in the conversation?" Zhang Yichen sneered, stood up straight, and the blue light in his palm became brighter. "Zhou Haoren, stop talking. What are you here to fuck? What are you trying to do?" Zhou Haoren pushed the lens and smiled even more gently. "I just passed by and heard that there was a cracking wave here. I just came over and saw it. But you are always so tight. Can you think you are so nervous?" His eyes passed by Zhang Yichen and glanced at the direction of the stone tablet. Ruoxi was shocked and quickly turned back and held his breath. "Don't play this with me." Zhou Haoren's smile froze, but soon returned to normal. He snatched his shoulders and said, "Okay, since you don't welcome me so much, I won't fight. But, Ichen, don't forget that the secret of the crack is not something you can keep alone. Sooner or later, you will understand that my choice is right." After speaking, he turned around and took the person away. His steps were not tight or slow, as if he was deliberately picking. Ruoxi waited until their feet completely disappeared before she dared to poke her head out, and asked in a small voice, "Who is that guy? He looks, not like a good person." Zhang Yichen's face was still difficult to see. He said in a low voice, "Zhou Haoren, I used to be my companion, but now I am a nuisance. He wants to use the power of the crack to destroy the balance of the two worlds and change what he wants. He made a decision and reiterated, he is very dangerous, don't let him discover you." Ruoxi clicked a little, and his heart became even more upset. She originally thought that this place was just a little different, but now it seems that it is still about harshness and struggle. She bit her lip and asked in a low voice, "Then, can the crack still work? Can I go back?" Zhang Yichen turned around and glanced at the small crack and said, "The wave just now has been interrupted. It's not stable now. You have to wait at least a few hours before you can try again. You have to wait." Ruoxi's heart sank, but there was no way to do it. She sat next to the stone tablet and watched Zhang Yichen continue to adjust the energy of the crack, and her heart was filled with scent. She wanted to go home quickly, but also felt that all this seemed to have something to do with her. The translational person mentioned by Zhou Haoren, could it be her? As time passed, the sky gradually darkened. Zhang Yichen finally stopped and turned his head to Ruoxi. "It's almost done, but the energy of the crack is still very weak, so it can only last for a few seconds. When you pass, remember, don't turn around, don't stop, and run directly. Do you understand?" Ruoxi clicked a little, and his heart was so tight. She stood up, walked to the crack, looked at the blurry scene inside, and took a deep breath. Zhang Yichen stood aside, holding the blue light in his palm, as if helping her to calm the crack. He said in a low voice, "Let's go when you're ready, don't waste time." Ruoxi gritted his teeth and took the first step. The air in the crack was like ice water, which made her skin hurt, but she didn't dare to stop and walked forward with her head hard. Just as I was about to pass through, a sharp smile suddenly came from my ears. "Little girl, I run very fast, it's a pity, it's too late." She was shocked suddenly, and without reacting, the crack behind her suddenly shook violently, as if she was being torn open by something. She turned her head in a subconscious mind and saw Zhou Haoren standing far away, holding a piece of black light in her hand, and a sneer was hanging on the corner of her mouth. Zhang Yichen roared, "Don't turn back. Run!" But it was too late, and the crack's energy suddenly lost control. Ruoxi only felt a huge suction force pulling her back, and his eyes turned dark, and the whole person was thrown back to the open space. Cough cough. She fell to the ground, inhaling in pain. When she looked up, Zhang Yichen had already rushed to her. The blue light in her palm formed a barrier, squeezing the black energy wave that Zhou Haoren threw. "Yichen, you are really a careless person." Zhou Haoren smiled and said, his eyes as cold as a knife. "But, this little girl is not an ordinary person, right? Her appearance can hardly hide the secret of the cracker. Do you really think that you can always keep that little hope?" Zhang Chen ignored him and just turned around and said in a low voice to Ruoxi, "Stand up and follow me. You can't stay here." Ruoxi gritted her teeth and got up. Although her legs were still shaking, she also knew that it was not the time to be afraid. She followed Zhang Chen to the other end of the open space, and Zhou Haoran's smile still replied behind her, "Run, no matter how far you run, you can't escape your fate." They ran very far, until Zhou Haoran's figure completely disappeared, and Zhang Chen stopped. His face was very poor, and his head was covered in sweat. It was obvious that the barrier just now consumed a lot of his energy. Ruoxi gasped and asked in a low voice, "What are we doing now?" "I'll leave the crack, can I still go back?" Zhang Chen was silent for a while, and finally said, "The cracks were not completely closed, they were just disturbed. We have to find a safe place to reposition the passage. However, since Zhou Haoran is eyeing you, things will be cumbersome. Next, you have to learn to protect yourself." Ruoxi was stunned for a moment, not expecting that he would say this. She looked down at her hands, her heart chaotic. Protect yourself? She didn't know what was here, how to protect it. But looking at Zhang Chen's tired and determined face, she suddenly felt that maybe she really had to face all this. Far away, a cracked light lit up again in the sky, as if reminding them that the danger was not over. Ruoxi took a deep breath and followed Zhang Chen to continue walking forward. Although she was still scared, she knew that she could no longer be that ordinary high school student now. Ruoxi followed Zhang Chen, her feet stumbled, and the only surprise scene was still snatching away in her brain. The light of the crack in the sky flickered in dark, as if mocking her powerlessly. She looked down at her gray denim pants, and her heart was filled with scent. A few hours ago, she was still worried about the math test. Now she was chased by a mirror-wearing change in this ghost place, and she couldn't find the way home. Zhang Chen walked in front, his steps were still fast, and the bottom of the black sweater was slightly shaking by the wind. He would occasionally look back at her, with a little impatient look in his eyes, but more of a kind of indescribable worry. Finally, he stopped and turned to her and said to her, "We have to find a place to hide. Zhou Haoran would not let you go so easily, and the waves of the crack also require time to stabilize." Ruoxi gasped, a little bit of head, although her heart was still irritating, but she knew that now was not the time to complain. "Then, where are we going? It looks quite dangerous here." Her voice was a little bit loud, and the continuous tightness of several hours made her throat feel like it was getting fire. Zhang Chen did not answer directly, but pointed to a half-collapsed building far away. "There is a temporary point. It should be safe if the Guardians used it before. At least it can give you a breath." After speaking, he took a step again, regardless of whether Ruoxi could keep up. Ruoxi gritted his teeth and jogged hard. Her book bag was still on her shoulders, and the book and pen bag inside were swaying with pace, reminding her how far she was in her original life. "When I walked to that building, it was completely dark and there was a damp and musty smell in the air. The building is empty, with some old equipment piled up in the corners of the wall, like some kind of instrument, but it has long been damaged." Zhang Chen lit a small light with his hand, and the dim yellow light barely illuminated a small area. "Sit down." He pointed to a broken chair, then stood against the wall, and began to check the crystal in his hand. After Ruoxi sat down, he felt that his bones were dying, but his brain was not relaxed at all. She looked at Zhang Chen, hesitated for a moment, and still asked, "Why did Zhou Haoran, why did he arrest me? I obviously don't know anything." Zhang Chen put his hand on, raised his head and looked at her. His eyes were still cold, but his temperament was a little calmer. "He is not trying to catch you, he is trying to use you. It is a secret that you can shuttle through the cracks. The power of the cracks is not just a channel, but also something deeper hidden. Zhou Haoran believes that if you control you, you can control the entire power of the cracks." Ruoxi felt a little tired after hearing this, and couldn't help but shrink her shoulders. "But I can't do anything. I just fell in accidentally. Why did it become something that key?" Zhang Chen was silent for a while, as if thinking about what to say. Finally, he said in a low voice, "The crack is not a random choice. People who can shuttle through all have a certain characteristic, or, to say, a certain connection. You may be selected, or, part of a larger plan. He paused and glanced at her in a confused manner. I'm not sure, but I'll figure it out for you. Ruoxi was stunned, and his brain buzzed. Selected? Plan? These words sound like movie lyrics, but she is standing here really hard and can't escape. She looked down at her hands, trying to recall the feeling of wearing through the lens, but there was still only a blank in her brain. After a while, she asked in a low voice, then, what should I do if I am really a key? I can't hide all the time, right? Zhang Yichen pulled the corner of his mouth, as if he wanted to laugh, but in the end he still couldn't laugh. He said, don't think too much first. The most important thing now is to live. I will teach you some basic things, such as how to feel the swelling of the cracks and how to protect yourself. Other things, wait until you can stand firm and talk about them. Ruoxi clicked a little, but although he was still unsure, he felt a little relieved when he heard that he would help. She leaned against the back of the chair, closed her eyes, trying to relax, but her brain still flashed over Xiaoqing's face and the familiar dining table at home. She didn't know if she could go back or whether her life would become completely different after she went back. In the next few days, Zhang Yichen began to teach her some knowledge about cleavage. He didn't say much, but every sentence was very realistic, such as how to distinguish the energy of the splitter was weak, and how to find a safe escape in times of danger. Ruoxi learned very slowly, and after all, these things were like heavenly books to her, but she gritted her teeth and held her heart because she knew that if she didn't learn it now, she might have no life in the future. One night, they were checking the waves of a small crack and preparing to reposition the channel. The crystal stone in Zhang Yichen's hand emitted a faint light, like a certain navigation tool. Ruoxi stood aside, watching him operate tightly, and suddenly heard a deep footstep from afar. She felt nervous and subconsciously grabbed Zhang Yichen's sleeve. Is that guy here again? Zhang Yichen glanced at her eyebrows and signaled her not to make a sound. Then he quickly put away the crystal and pulled her to hide behind a wall. The sound of the footsteps is getting closer and closer, accompanied by a low voice of conversation. Ruoxi held his breath and secretly poked out his head. He saw a few black shadows walking past the other side of the street. Zhou Haoren was the leader. He was still as gentle as that, and he pushed his eyes and smiled slightly from the corner of his mouth, as if he had known that they were here for a long time. Yichen, I know you are here. His voice was so gentle that it made people goosebumps. Don't hide it, let's talk. I'm not here to fight this time, I just want to make a deal. Zhang Yichen sneered and stood out, with a blue light lit up in his palm. Trade? Do you think I will believe you? Zhou Haoren heard the voice, as if he didn't care about his enemies. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, but you have to think about how long that little girl can last. She is an ordinary person, and she shouldn't be able to get into something. Do you really think that relying on you alone can protect her? His vision went beyond Zhang Yichen, and he looked at Ruoxi's hiding place, with a flash of interest in his eyes. Ruoxi felt cold in his heart, and he quickly turned around, feeling that his back was slid. Zhang Yichen's face was even harder to see, and his voice was as low as if it was pulled out from a tooth. Don't waste your time, what's the purpose? Zhou Haoren smiled and started to speak. Just give her to me. I promise not to hurt her, but I just need her to help unravel the last secret of the crack. As an exchange, I can help you stabilize all the cracks and make both worlds safe and sound. How about this? Isn't this condition wrong? Ruoxi's heartbeat was almost stopped when she heard it. Hand over her? Help unravel the secret? She couldn't figure out why she was here, and how could she be able to help her? She secretly glanced at Zhang Yichen and realized that his face was terrible, and the blue light in his palm flickered, as if it was suppressing something extremely hard. Be a dream. Zhang Yichen gritted his teeth. Do you think I don't know your plans? Once the secret of the crack is uncovered, both worlds will be ruined. Please avoid such a ghost. Zhou Haoren sighed, as if very disappointed. Yichen, you are still so stubborn. Have you not learned the teachings of that year? Well, since you don't want to, don't blame me for being rude. He just fell, and a few black shadows behind him suddenly moved. A group of black energy waves lit up in his hand, and smashed them in the direction of Zhang Yichen. Hide! Zhang Yichen roared, quickly lifted up a blue barrier, and blocked the first wave of attacks. He turned to Ruoxi, run behind, don't turn around. I'll hold them. Ruoxi was stunned for a moment. Although she was so scared in her heart, she knew that it was not the time to be wise. She clicked a little, turned around and ran, stumbled into the deep street. The huge impact of energy collision came from behind, and Zhang Yichen's low roar. She gritted her teeth and did not dare to turn around, but just buried her head and ran forward. She didn't know how long she had run, until her lungs were almost blown up, and she stopped and gasped with a big mouthful of breath on a wall. It was quiet around, and only a low sound came from a distance, like a wave of cracks. She looked down at herself, her palms were sweating because of the tightness, and her heart was in a mess. Can Zhang Yichen hold on? If he is caught, what will she do alone? At this moment, a light smile came from his ears. Little girl, run very fast. Ruoxi raised his head suddenly, only seeing Zhou Haoran appearing in front of her at some point, and the smile on his face was so gentle that it made people creepy. He pushed the lens and said slowly, "Don't be nervous," I said, "you won't hurt you. As long as you work with me, everything will be fine." Ruoxi subconsciously retreated, and his voice was trembling. I don't know anything, you're looking for a wrong person." Zhou Haoran slammed his head, as if seeing through her fear. "No, you are that person. It's no coincidence that the cracker chose you. Come with me, I will let you understand your value." He stretched out his hand, as if he was asking, but his eyes were filled with a sense of pressure that could not be rejected. Ruoxi's heart beats like a drum. She knew she couldn't escape, but she didn't want to be taken away. The brain suddenly flashed through what Zhang Yichen taught her, the wave of the ripples. She closed her eyes and tried to concentrate. Sure enough, she felt a faint energy everywhere, as if she was summoning her. She suddenly opened her eyes and gritted her teeth and rushed towards that direction. Interesting. Zhou Haoran smiled and didn't rush to chase her, but just followed her slowly, like a cat playing with a mouse. Ruoxi ran and sweated heavily, and finally came to a ruin, and the energy fluctuations in the air became stronger. She looked around and found that a piece of gravel was filled with blue light, like the entrance to a crack. She couldn't think too much, and went over and slashed the stone with her hands. Sure enough, she saw a small crack, and could see the familiar street scene inside. That was her world. She was about to jump in, and Zhou Haoran's voice came from behind. "Do you really think it's so easy to escape?" His hand slammed, and a black energy wave hit her. Ruoxi subconsciously fell to the ground. The energy wave brushed against her shoulders and smashed the wall next to her. "Don't force me to move." Zhou Haoran's voice became cold. "You can't escape, follow me obediently, and you still have a way out." Ruoxi bit her teeth tightly, and the place where her shoulders were damaged was painful, but she knew that it was really over when she stopped. She turned her head and looked at the crack, and a thought suddenly flashed through her brain. What if she could control the energy of the crack? Zhang Yichen said that she has a certain characteristic on her body. Maybe she can try it. She closed her eyes and tried to feel the ripples swelling like she had practiced before. Sure enough, a stream of ice-cold energy flowed from her fingertips, flowing through her body like a stream of water. She opened her eyes suddenly, reached out to the crack, trying to expand its scope. The crack's light lit up instantly, the entrance became larger, and even the sound of cars on the other street. Impossible. Zhou Haoran's face finally changed. He didn't expect Ruoxi to do this. He gritted his teeth and rushed over, and the black energy wave in his hand was about to be developed. At this moment, a blue light suddenly rushed over from the side, squeezing Zhou Haoran's attack. Zhang Yichen's figure appeared beside Ruoxi, covered in scars, but he still stood up straight. He said to Ruoxi in a low voice, "Go away. I'll hold him." Ruoxi's eyes became hot, and he clicked a little, turning around and jumped into the crack. The cold energy wrapped around her, her ears were filled with the sound of crying, and the sound of fighting between Zhang Yichen and Zhou Haoran. She bit her teeth and told herself that she could not turn back and could only run forward. A few seconds later, she fell heavily in the familiar alley, carrying dust from the parallel world. She looked up and saw that it was the door of the antique warehouse. The lens was still standing quietly in the store, as if nothing had happened. She gasped, got up and rushed into the store, and found that the mirror had returned to a calm, as if it had not opened. "Ruoxi?" A familiar voice came from the entrance of the alley. Chen Xiaoqing was wearing a bright yellow jacket and looked at her in surprise. "Why are you here? Why are you so dirty? I just went to your house to find you, but your mother said you didn't go back." Ruoxi was stunned for a moment, then he rushed over and hugged Xiaoqing, his eyes falling down. "Xiqing, I thought I would never see you again." She choked and couldn't speak, and a sense of grievance and fear in her heart stormed out. Xiaoqing was soaked by her, but she still patted her back to comfort her. Okay, it's okay. How can it be the same as a life and death? Tell me if you have something to do, I'll help you." Her temperament was still so careless, but Ruoxi felt very at ease when she heard it. That night, Ruoxi followed Xiaoqing back home, took a hot shower, changed into clean clothes, and finally felt like she was back to normal life. But she knew in her heart that something had changed. She looked at the night sky outside the window, and there was still the blue light flashing through the cracks in her brain, and the cold and reliable face of Zhang Yichen. She didn't know if he was injured, nor did she know if Zhou Haoran would chase after him, but she felt that all this was not over. A few days later, she plucked up her courage and went to the antique warehouse again, and found that the lens was still there, with a surface calming like a stagnant water. She hesitated for a moment, reached out and touched her, but nothing happened. Just as she was about to leave, a faint ripple suddenly appeared on the lens, and a low voice came from it. "Ruoxi, don't come back." The crack was sealed at the moment, but Zhou Haoran is still there. "You, live well." It's Zhang Yichen's voice. Ruoxi was shocked and asked quickly, "You are fine, are you? What's going on?" But the lens quickly returned to its calmness, as if it had never been over. She stood there, stunned for a long time, and finally bit her lip and turned away. The wind in the alley was a little sluggish. She tightened her coat and made her steps more stable than when she came. She knew that whether things in parallel worlds ended or not, she had to continue her life. Xiaoqing was still waiting for her to go to school together, and her mother would still talk about her exam results, and her life was still so ordinary and shattered. But there was an unspeakable weight in her heart. It was a memory of another world and an unfinished responsibility. Far away, the cloud layer in the sky scattered slowly, revealing a glimmer of light. Ruoxi raised his head, took a deep breath, walked forward, and walked quickly with a firm footstep.